That's better.
Is that better? Yeah, now you can see me, so.
I say that's why I'm so ugly, because my face closed.
Had to go.
Yeah. Okay, I've got 4 o'clock. I'd like to call the meeting of the Isabella County Board of Commissioners work session to order. Stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Looks a roll call, please.
Commissioner Hutchinson,
Here.
Commissioner Engler,
Here.
Commissioner Jelzinski,
Here. 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 Here.
Here.
Chairman.
Thank you. Next up is approval of agenda. We'll have general public comment, and then under presentations and special reports, we got a presentation from a couple gentlemen from Region 7 Area Agency on Aging, one live and one on the Zoom. And then we've got a couple of appointments to boards and commissions. One to the E. coli ad hoc committee and one for the deputy medical examiner. And then that would bring us down to committee reports, Finance Administration Committee.
Finance and Administration Committee is all set, Mr. Chairman.
And Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee, we have no business there tonight. And Human Resources and Public Works Committee.
Resource and Public Works Committee is all set, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And then Intergovernmental Affairs, Commissioner Marino, do we have any intergovernmental affairs?
Not at this time, sir.
Thank you. No administrator, controller issues, no unfinished business. Under new business, we've got a couple items. We're going to consider a lease agreement between the county and a gentleman who wants to use some of our property for agricultural purposes. And then item B would be a resolution for the millage for the Isabella County Medical Care Facility. And we have a couple folks from that facility here to talk. So I appreciate you being here. And then another opportunity for general public comment at the end of the meeting, and then announcements and adjournment. So with that, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved, Jelzinski.
Support, Marino.
Supported. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And that would bring us to general public comment. Do we have anyone for general public comment? Michelle, do we have anyone online? Okay. All right, then we'll move on to presentations and special reports. Region 7 Area Agency on Aging. It says Executive Director Bob Brown, but I know that you are not Bob Brown.
I'm Bob Brown, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
I'm the Executive Director of Region 7 Area Agency on Aging. Can you hear me?
I can.
Great. So Nathaniel's going to talk about the packet and everything in a few minutes and actually go over a sheet, the return on investment. As you know, you grant us a local match. Every year we send out an invoice for a couple $1,000s and we return, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars back to care to your folks. I also am charged to give my Board of Governors a report each year in regards to our fiscal responsibilities. And that board is appointed by 10 county commissions and 1 city. So with that said, I kind of look at the county commissions as my Board of Governors above my actual Board of Directors. And when you look at it that way, but also my agency, our agency was formed by these 10 counties in a city with the foresight to leverage a few local dollars to get millions of federal dollars and state dollars to take care of older Americans, disabled, and our veterans. And we do a very good job of that. Sometimes people say, why not just do it locally? Well, based on the Older Americans Act, there's certain demographics and certain levels of population and things that you need. No one county could have done it on their own. Probably about 40 years ago, 10 counties got together and said, let's work together and go get this money like they're doing downstate. And you've done a wonderful job since then. And that. So the other thing is if you dealt directly with the state, one, you would probably not be able to do direct services like you do working through us. And secondly, the state would charge you about 15% for admin, where my admin, our admin at Region 7 is 5%. And as far as my fiscal report is, we, for the 5 years that I've been privileged to be your executive director at Region 7, we have had unmodified opinions from our auditors, but more importantly, we have yet to I'm not saying it ain't ever going to happen, but we've yet to receive a management letter, and we're very proud of that. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Nathaniel Bergman, that is actually present, to finish the presentation, and I will stay on to help him and answer any questions you folks have. But he's our chief pharmacist and kind of like our all go-to media and project manager.
Well, thank you, Bob, and thank you, Commission, for allowing us to come present to you. I have to say, I had the privilege to present to you in 2019, and it is great to be back in person after a couple of years of not being able to see people face to face and work with you. So the area agencies on aging, just a little bit of history. Bob kind of already talked about this, but the area agencies on aging were formed with the Older Americans Act back in 1965. As Bob mentioned, 10 counties. Those counties are the Saginaw Bay region, the Thumb region of the state, and then the Central Michigan region, which includes obviously Isabella County. Our big goal is to work with each of those local commissions on aging in each of the counties to help provide those services that they provide, such as home delivered meals, congregate meals, personal care. We want to form partnerships to grow those relationships and to provide better, bigger services to everybody in your local community. Bob already mentioned it, but we are very proud of our ability to keep administration costs low. And with that allows for more money to flow into your local community. In your packet that we passed out earlier does have a lot of different brochures with different programs, and I'm going to talk about some of those now. One of our biggest programs that we administer is the My Choice Home and Community-Based Waiver Program. This is a program that is completely free to individuals who are eligible for this program. The goal of this program is to keep people out of the nursing home and into their home, which with COVID-19 has been a huge key. And we've seen the demand for this program ever increase, with individuals preferring to be at home with family and loved ones, but they need that additional help to get home. In order to be able to meet criteria, individuals have to meet a nursing home level of care. They have to be financially eligible. That means that their income needs to be less than $2,523 a month. They have to be 65 and older or 18 and older with a disability, and their assets have to be less than $2,000. We go through a screening process with all these individuals that are referred to our agency, And then once they're able to be part of this program, we're able to offer services in their home. It could be meal services, it could be yard work services. The biggest need is personal health care or personal care within their home that we can offer to help family members or even that individual to live independently on their own in their home. Our agency serves over 900 clients as part of this program, and annually with disenrollments and enrollments, we serve over 1,200 total. This program is a huge cost savings to our community, to our state, but also really puts people where they want to be back in their home. Another program that we offer and we work with is the care management program. This is a program for those 60 and older. And this is a similar to waiver program, but there's a little bit less in services with this program, but financial constraints and the requirement for Medicaid aren't there for this program. So definitely a program that we can offer more freely to individuals within the community as financial availability is there. Obviously, nutrition programs are one of the largest programs you hear about locally here with your Commission on Aging. We've seen a rather large shift in those from congregate meal sites to more and more home delivered meals, especially with COVID. And our relationship with the Isabella Commission on Aging has been excellent to help make sure we get those meals to those in need. In-home services such as personal care, homemaking, respite, transportation, case coordination, all of those services, many are done in coordination with the Isabella Commission on Aging. Adult daycare, caregiver training, legal assistance, elder abuse are also a bunch of the different services that we can help offer these individuals. We also offer many different classes. We're looking to slowly bring some of those back in person, but virtual options are there for those who are interested in fall prevention classes or diabetes education type classes. We also offer the Medicare Medicaid assistance program. This is a program that helps individuals navigate Medicare and Medicaid. The system is very tough for many individuals, especially the elderly in our community, to understand and navigate. So we are able to offer free and unbiased information about which drug plan is best for individuals or what they should do in management of their Medicare and Medicaid. I'm happy to announce that we provide this service to over 10,000 people in our 10 counties. And last year alone, we saved over $2.4 million for these individuals in cost of their health care. We also have the information and assistance group within our agency. These individuals are there to help provide resources. Think of it as your 211 for the elderly. They can call, we can help refer them out to services that might best suit their needs. We can help guide them in what they might need to fulfill their wants to stay within the community. And then we lastly have the Senior Community Services Employment Program. This is a training program to help seniors learn different job tasks that would allow them to find employment within the community after this training is done. So the financials, there is a financial fiscal year 21 funding sheet in your folder there. Isabella County paid $2,566 in dues for fiscal year 21. I did look back, and this is actually the same amount you paid over the last 5 years, so that number has not increased. But with that, you've received over 1.5 million in services to members of this community, whether it was part of the My Choice Waiver program, home delivered meals, or any of the other services listed on that funding formula. That number comes out to be a 591% return on investment, which is absolutely amazing for your community. In Isabella County, we served close to 1,500 individuals with our various programs that we coordinate with. And as an agency, we provided over 1,200 people as that My Choice Waiver program, with at least 60 of those individuals being in the Isabella County region. One other thing I did want to bring up is an exciting thing that we just released a couple weeks ago. I'm sure you've all been working through with the American Rescue Plan Act funding. We had some funding that was specific, passed along to us for the aging population, and we've actually started to work with each of the local commissions on projects that they could use this funding on. So that'll be something really exciting is being able to do updates and different things, whether it's with programs or being able to grow the programs and provide more services to those in your region. With that, do you have any questions?
Questions? Sure. Vice Chairman Horton.
You mentioned the ARP funding. What dollar amount did you receive? And what percentage of that will be passed on to the Commission on Aging?
Bob, I don't know if you remember the exact funding number. I believe it was in the $3 million range.
It's just over $3 million, and it will go out according to the formula, just like we distribute Older Americans Act dollars. And we can get you the exact amount for your county, but it would be the same ratio as when we get the Older Americans Act dollars. We use the same formula as the state does when they distribute the system to us. And the agency, that's been a long legacy formula. They just followed the state formula. But we'll get you the exact number.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? I don't see any other hands up, but Bob, thank you. Nathan, thank you.
Thank you very
Appreciate
much.
Thank you for the time. We enjoy presenting. One thing, we have very limited dollars to spend on marketing. So getting out and doing the advocacy allows us to spread the word. And if you spread the word, we love feeling your citizens' calls, who we consider our clients and guests.
That's the best kind of marketing anyway, from what I hear. Thank you.
And as Nathaniel said, it's great to be out again after being shuttered for 2 years.
Okay. Next up would be appointments to boards and commissions. And we have an appointment under letter A, and Commissioner Sweeney, can I pick on you to read that?
Certainly, Chair Hope. Consider appointing Ms. Corin Foss to serve on Isabella County Board of Commissioners Equally Ad Hoc Committee as the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe representative, and Troy Heckman to serve as the alternate.
Support. Okay, it doesn't need to be a motion yet. That's all right. One of the things I wanted to do when I took over the chairmanship is kind of resurrect this E. coli ad hoc and get it together and meet again. Maybe just for informational purposes, but maybe see where it goes. And one thing I really wanted to do was get representation from the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe on that committee. If you're going to talk about water quality and water testing, it doesn't make sense for them to not be at the table for those conversations. So I'm excited. We have Corin Foss, who's, I think, heads up the environmental team there, and then Troy Tecklin, also on the environmental team. So I'm happy and excited about that. So we'll consider that tonight. And then item B, Commissioner Engler, would you present item B, please?
Or consider appointing Dr. Christopher Hodge as Deputy Medical Examiner for the County of Isabella, effective immediately.
Thank you. So the former Deputy Medical Examiner, Dr. Patrick Hansma, took a job at Western Michigan University. So they have a new Deputy Medical Examiner. So we will consider appointing him tonight. And then that brings us down to committee reports, Finance and Administration Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. First up, consider ratifying and placing on file the April 15th, 2022 invoice list in the amount of $277,226.38. The April 2nd, 2020 invoice list in the amount of $758,260.62. And the adjustment list dated April 28th, 2022. Commissioners received these by email. They have a chance to review them. We reviewed both invoices, both invoice lists. in committee. As to the April 15th, pretty much everything. We had a few tax refunds. We also had some standard payments that we make every month, or in one instance, a biweekly. Manpower to the weekly contracted labor to the material recovery facility. Does any commissioners have any questions on the April 15th invoice? Okay, hearing and seeing none, then we will now go into the discussion of the April 22nd invoice. Again, drains were made up the majority of this. Administration had some applications, community mental health, Manicusterian. We had our monthly payment to Steve Krinovic, and nothing really out of the ordinary there. Commissioners, did you have any questions on that? Hearing and seeing none on the adjustment list, standard adjustments made for Gordon Foods and Consumers Energy. Basically, we pay our bills on time, therefore we don't have any late fees attached. Okay, any commissioners have anything else? Okay, hearing and seeing nothing, Chairman Hope, thus we'll move on to this evening.
Next item is consider approving the commitment of fund balance in the amount in the general fund in the amount of $1,214,978, the Isabella County Sheriff's Office and Correctional Facility Project. This is an amount equal to the personal property taxes on the central part of the county, that wind farm. I don't believe it includes coal. But, we talked in the past, I know we're pausing the jail construction project, but we need to start setting aside assets so that we can move that project forward in the future. And so one of the things we can do, since we've been basically saying we're going to use those personal property tax revenues for this project, is to put it into a fund that commits it to that project. Nicole, did you want to add to that?
You did perfectly. Excuse me. I just would add that it is from all of the wind turbine revenues collected in fiscal 21, not just the northern wind farm, but also in coal.
Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Horton.
Yeah, this is something the board is, or especially in the Finance and Administration Committee, has talked about, and I've mentioned it for quite some time now. The board has the ability to restrict certain funds revenue, and this goes into what's called a committed fund, which is the only way it goes in by board resolution, I believe, and then the only way it comes out is by board resolution. Again, it's subject to the boards, so this board is going to put it in, commit the funds. Another board could uncommit. That would, reasons to uncommit is anything from they just don't want to do that anymore to there's some major catastrophe that took place and funding is necessary, but that would require board action to do that. So again, we've talked ad nauseum in regards to how to fund the correctional facility and the sheriff's department, and the wind turbines is the major component of it, and not to adequately plan for it is not what this board is stating at all. We are planning for it, and this is where the funds are being dedicated for it. So, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? We'll move this forward then to tonight's meeting.
Next up, consider accepting and placing on file the fiscal year 2022 second quarter financial report as presented. Before I turn this over to our County Administrator Controller, Nicole Frost, this is just basically a snapshot in time, kind of lists the county where they're basically through the halfway period. You'll see a couple blips and adjustments above 50%. You'll see some significant below, but most everything is coming under right around 10% under, which is kind of nice to see. People are making efforts to control their spending. And with right now, if you look at our revenue is not on fumes, but our revenue is basically where it is all the time until some of the tax monies come in. So with that statement, I will now look to my left and turn to Ms. Frost.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner Horton. I think you stole a lot of the thunder. I mean, that's basically the report. I'll just point out some highlights. This is for 6 months ending March 31st. So as Commissioner Horton said, we should be looking at that 50% mark for the fiscal year. Front page shows you general fund revenues and where we are at. Remember, it's always scary and we always accept the fact that our taxes are a meager 5% at this point in the year. And we always understand that's okay because the county operating levy doesn't hit until the July 1 tax bills in the summer. And so we don't start collecting our revenue until that last quarter. What we did in this quarterly financial report to the board, though, is down below, we took out the property taxes basically and said, let's look at where are we at total revenues if you take out the property taxes aside. It's kind of just a more meaningful percentage for you other than we always just excuse it away. Oh, we haven't got taxes yet. So if you take out the property taxes, we are just over 31% for the year for general fund revenues. That is really right on par with where we generally are. You can see we've budgeted a use of ARPA funds in that federal and state revenue line that we have not yet utilized. And so that's kind of driving that percentage down. And then also traditionally our state revenues lag, and we're not seeing that any different this year. So just point that out. So overall, 16% with taxes, 31% of revenues if you take the taxes out. One other thing I would talk about is that large budget amendment that we brought forward be 2 meetings ago now that the board approved. Those budget amendments were approved in April, at your first April meeting. And so none of those amendments would be reflected in this quarterly report, right? Because you date that budget amendment in April. So we'll get better with the process and improve and learn as we go forward. Hopefully we'll have those budget amendments done before the quarter so that those changes we're talking about get reflected when you see the report for that quarter. So we are learning and improving in the process. The next page shows general fund expenditures. At least the first portion of the general fund expenditures, as Commissioner Horton stated, if you look down that percent spent column on the right-hand side, there are very few things that are over that 50% mark. One department that's over is administration department. Part of what's driving that percentage up is that our property and liability insurance is all paid out of the admin budget. That's all paid for the year. That's a few $100,000. And so that does kind of drive that percentage up. Also, if you think about it, in October, November, December, we had more wages coming out of admin. And as we go through the year, those wages will lessen, if you will. We won't have as many wages paid out as in first quarter. So that's kind of driving that percentage up as well. The other department that you see over their 50% mark in general government is Cooperative Extension. That's our MSU Extension office. And that's because we pay a quarterly memorandum to Michigan State and we pay that ahead. So we've paid 3 quarters of the year, if you will. So that's why their percentage is closer to 75. Looking at public safety budgets, everyone is doing very, very well. And you can see collectively, we're just under 50% for all of the public safety departments, sheriff, road patrol, corrections, emergency management, and animal control. Community development is sitting really good at just under 43% for expenditures. And that next one in public works, that drain at large, we see we're overspent, but remember the budget amendment that you have just approved built in that extra $20,000 to cover that overage this year. So continuing on the third page is the rest of the general fund expenditures. Health and welfare, we're sitting at just over 43% spent. You'll see 0 spent for substance abuse so far this year. That's really actually right on pace where we are generally annually. What the money that gets sent to substance abuse is essentially 50% of the convention and facilities tax that we receive. And we haven't received any of that revenue yet in the fiscal year. Looking back to last year, May was the first time we received that revenue in the fiscal year. So that's why I say we're right on track. As soon as that revenue comes in, 50% of it goes out to substance abuse. You can see Veterans Affairs is a little over budget, and that is because we've talked about this before. They've got that County Veteran Service Fund grant. They get $50,000 in expenditures up front, and they've spent that. And so that's why they kind of look overspent at halfway mark for the year. Contingency, we haven't touched yet. That's still at 0%. And then all those transfers out are at 50%, except for MIDC. We do transfer that whole chunk right in the beginning of the year. So that starts out basically at 100%. So you can see total general fund expenditures, just under 47%. That's very exciting. Last page shows some of our major funds outside of general fund. These show revenues and expenditures for these funds. You'll see that Parks and Rec and Commission on Aging always are superstars. Their revenues are over, up there upwards of 80%. And that's kind of the opposite function of what we see in the general fund, where we get our revenues in the last quarter. They get their revenues in the first quarter because they're on the winter tax bill. So that's why their revenues are so great at this point of the year. Friend of the Court, Child Care Fund, those reimbursements are slow from the state, and that's no different this year. Central Dispatch, although that's not tax levy, it is a surcharge, and those do lag, right? They come in after the fact. So we never get worried to see that percentage low. Also, Central Dispatch has a healthy fund balance to carry them through as we're waiting for the next quarter's surcharges to come. Inspections is sitting almost perfectly at 48% of revenues. And recycling, as we have heard, doing really well with commodity prices right now, just over 53%. So doing wonderfully on expenditure side too. Parks and Rec, under 30% spent. Your big season is coming up though. So expenditures will start to occur more in this last half of the year. Friend of the Court, right on track. Commission on Aging, right on track. Child Care Fund, we do have expenditures well under budget this year, which is exciting, and we all know that can change. So we're just happy to celebrate them being under 30% spent. Central Dispatch is a little bit above 50% spent. They do have some equipment maintenance on their sirens that happen at the beginning of the year, and that kind of drives up that percentage. And again, inspections and recycling both doing really well to keep under that 50% budget. I can't say enough and tell you how good a job your department heads and electeds do at staying inside of their budgeted amounts. It's really, really nice to see. Are there any questions for me about this quarterly financial report? It occurs to us, and by us, I mean myself and County Accountants Melissa Franquist and Chris Whitmer. Since the beginning of the year, we've been meeting weekly to go over the revenue expenditure report of the general fund, and we also go through the balance sheet. And it's dawning on me, the balance sheet's probably a pretty helpful tool for the commissioners in addition to the quarterly report. So we'll start to bring that forward going forward also.
Commissioners, any questions? Okay, hearing seeing none, the fiscal year 2022 second quarter financial report is presented. We'll move forward.
The committee's last item of business is the 3-year financial forecast update. And I believe I saw Steve Kravinovich online. There he is. Welcome, Steve. Would you like to lead us through this discussion?
Yes, Commissioner, absolutely. Can everybody hear me? Good?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so I will share my screen if I should be able to do this since I've done it 1,000 times, but you never know. So, okay, so you should hopefully see the spreadsheet there on the screen?
We do, Steve.
Okay, awesome. And then also what we did, now we'll kind of talk about the changes and so forth, but we printed, I think Jessica printed the changes in kind of a narrative form. We went through those last week at the committee, but then also she printed those. So hopefully each of the commissioners have that sheet at their spots. So we'll kind of go through that quickly and kind of point you to what impact those have had on the forecast. As you remember,
and I'll just hop in to show the commissioners, this is the page that Steve's talking about, should be in front of you with the changes made to the forecast. We also printed off this 3-year. This is basically going to be what Steve's forecast results in, but it's a little tough maybe to see on the screen. So we just printed it so it was a little larger for you.
Okay.
And then the other piece is the 10-year that Steve may reference, but it's really just there for your information. We can talk about it after the model. Thanks, Steve.
sure, absolutely. And I'll make that a little bit, I'm gonna shrink you guys so I can see the whole screen. Does that help? I think I tried to make it a little bit bigger too. So hopefully that'll help. So as you remember, and as we've talked in the past, this is, a living, breathing document, and so we'll continue to update this as frequently as possible, at least quarterly, and then share it obviously with the commissioners. So gives you the best and most accurate information that we can provide to you. So we'll start with revenues. These are a couple of the areas that we changed. And again, they're on that sheet that you have in front of you. But as Nicole has mentioned, we have better information, more accurate information from equalization as they received their reports in. So as you can see on the screen, or if you have a hard copy of it there, it's kind of a light purple shaded area of the wind turbine revenue. And we have for the 2022 year, if you recall, this was the budgeted column here, column G, that you can see on the financial statements, or on the spreadsheet. But we had a little better number for turbine. So as you can see here, we've updated that number to $2,254,000. And in total, property taxes and the turbine revenue, including all the everything for turbines, is in total about $15.2 million. If you were to have this spreadsheet, if you had this spreadsheet when we did it initially back in February, that number was I believe about 13.666 million. And so with better, more honed down numbers, we're able to project a little better revenues for regular property taxes for the general fund, and then the turbine revenue. So those were large updates. That's why they're shaded there in kind of that light purple. And just to reference back to the Finance Committee's commitment of those funds, that was on I think the very first component of the Finance Committee. Here is that $1,214,000 in column F, F5. That was the amount of turbine revenue for the fiscal year ended September 30, 2021. That you just discussed as far as committing those funds to those the sheriff project, the sheriff in jail project. So that happens to be that number right there. Just kind of wanted to point that out to you. So those two numbers, like I said, we changed. And then the next component, if you remember, as we went through this presentation in the past time in February when we went through this, we also had, I'm going to shrink this just a little so we can get a little bit more on the screen. We've projected out roughly a 2% increase. As you can see here, we have a more accurate number of a 2% increase of property tax revenues increasing for 23, 24, and 25, as you can see. And if you were to go back to this in February and look at it, we had kind of a unique percentage in here because we didn't have accurate numbers yet on the property taxes. So we showed this as a large, I think it was a negative number to get down to roughly, what we felt the number was going to be. Now with accurate numbers for property taxes and turbines, we were able to better project our increase in property taxes for 23, 24, and 25. And we felt that kind of validates itself by, if you look here at this column, over the last 5 years, as it shows here on line 4, we had an average change in property taxes of 2.99%. So we felt, very confident and comfortable using 2% for 23, 24, and 25. We felt that kind of, validated the numbers that we were using. One of the other changes that we made was on line 7, this revenue that's called intergovernmental revenue. So that's all of your federal, state dollars that flow into the county. Everything from utilization of ARPA dollars to state revenue sharing to cooperative reimbursement, all those various different grants and so forth. And we had a large utilization of ARPA dollars in 2022. In 2023, as we calculated this number here to get 3.8 million, we factored in roughly about $100,000 worth of an increase to the state revenue sharing to include some local community stabilization authority dollars, and then also some of those cannabis dollars. We increased that revenue for 23 and then let it project out from there. In 23, we added about $100,000 to that revenue from the report that we did back in February, just to take a conservative approach to those additional fundings that will be coming through for the 22-23 fiscal year. And then also the other change in revenues is this utilization of fund balance. As we went through this and made some changes, it was mainly to get, I think Nicole said you have the summary page in front of you, but the usage of fund balance over these 3 years is the same in total. We had to make, I think it was about a $50,000 change in the timing of the years. As you can look here in 24, we have 710,000. In 25, we have 1,260,000. And so I think we basically shifted about a $50,000 amount from 24 to 25. It wasn't needed to utilize it in 24, but we needed a little bit more in 25. So in total, the numbers, the total number is the same, just a timing change. And then finally for revenues, line 13. As we went through this, and you look at the percent or the numbers for 23, 24, and 25, we again modified this slightly in total. If you recall, in February, this utilization of dollars from the delinquent tax revolving fund was $500,000 a year. So it was 500, 500, 500 for 23, 24, and 25. We looked at that and made a determination, at least at this point, that there wasn't as much needed in 23, and a little bit more was needed in 25. So as you can see, we went from 250,000, 500,000, and then 600,000. So in the prior one, you saw a total of about 1.5 million in there, 500,000 each year. And then this time, you can see a utilization from the delinquent tax fund of about 1,350,000. So a slight reduction in usage of dollars from the delinquent tax fund was what we were estimating being necessary to kind of balance the equation in the forecast. So that's the revenue side of things. I don't know if there's any questions specifically on revenue. We'll jump to expenditures and then we'll kind of look at the totals. Okay, So hopefully I haven't lost you since I've got you. Since I've got you shrunk down, I can't see if there's anything. So if somebody has a question, they need to holler real loud so I can hear you. But and then I don't see anybody that's sleeping. So I'm at least hopefully keeping you alert. And so the expenditure side of things, some changes here that we talked about at the Finance Committee the first time we presented it. And the commissioners wanted some changes made there. And so we took those thoughts into consideration and made some changes to the expenditure side of the equation. As you can see here, again, if you recall last time, the projections or the forecast for 23, 24, and 25 are driven off of these numbers up here in the top in green. And if you recall, again, back in February, those were 1%, 1%, 1%. And so we made some modifications there to those numbers and tweaked those from, for salaries and benefits at 1%, we went to 2.5%. And then again, the operational charges, operational expenditures from 1% up to that 1.5%. So we made some modifications there. And obviously that then flows through the whole spreadsheet and projects those increases to 23, 24, and 25. And then the other two items that we changed looking at 23 was we factored in an additional 350,000 of capital outlay for potential capital outlay as needed. And we kept it under the Board of Commissioners just because we didn't have a specific, it was more of I don't know if the placeholder is the right word, but we knew that there was probably going to be some sort of capital outlay expenditures. We didn't know specifically which department those would be caused in. So we placed that in the Board of Commissioners area of that 350,000. And then if you recall the added MERS amounts that we factored in the past, that number was 280,000 a year. For 23, 24, and 25, and after some additional information from MERS, the expectation was that number was going to be a little bit higher. So we increased that 280,000 to 380,000 for 23, 24, and 25. So those weren't as many changes on the expenditure side, but they were large changes, obviously, because the overall spreadsheet changes by just changing these numbers here at the top. It drives everything else. So they were more pervasive changes, I guess. They weren't specific changes, but it were more more changes like that changed a vast majority of the numbers. So taking all those expenditures and all those revenues, boils us down back up here to the very top. And I believe Nicole said this is a page that you all have in front of you for 23, 24, and 25. So this page, again, remember that disclaimer there at the bottom that past performance may not be indicative of future results, but how 23, 24, and 25's forecast shook out for 23. A little over 23 million in revenues, almost 23 million in expenditures, to come to revenues over expenditures of about 91,000 for 23 based on the forecast. And then 24 and 25, pretty consistent. We had 24.3 in revenues and about 24.3 in expenditures to have a slight, $2,400 revenue over expenditure. And then in 25, we see 25,236,000 in revenues, 25,231 in expenditures, for a little over a $5,000 addition to fund balance in 2025. I know that's a ton of information. And like I said, I think we probably even went to it more in detail at finance, but I don't know if there's any specific general questions, specific questions, anything that I can answer. I'd be happy to do that.
Before I open up the floor, I do have one question. I know we have the bond anticipation note that has to be paid back within a 3-year period. I don't know when that deadline is, but does your spreadsheet accommodate for that repayment, which would be about what, 3.5 million? Or
Yeah,
6
and
Million, $6 million is the payback, but we do still have a couple million that we haven't spent of it yet. So we have a reserved fund balance to make that payment if the project bond isn't let by then to pay off the bond anticipation note. It's not specifically reflected in the forecast here. I don't believe where it would be reflected is that assigned fund balance that it can't be used for any other purpose but to pay back the bond anticipation note. Does that answer your question?
I think so.
It's in the fund balance in this model, and it's assigned fund balance.
Okay. I'm sure we're going to talk more about that in committee. Other questions or comments? Commissioner?
Yeah,
Horton?
Steve, can you hear me okay? Commissioner Horton here.
yes, sir.
Okay, couple questions. Again, I'm looking at we're into the 10-year financial forecast now, right? You've spoke on that, my understanding. I just have a couple questions and comments. One, you drop off the use of the delinquent tax revolving fund. You start dropping it in 2028 down to roughly 10% of what it is. And then in 2029, excuse me, I misspoke, 20% down to 20% only in 2028. And then in 2029, you go down to 10% of what it currently we take out. And then 30, 31, and 32, there's nothing taken out of the delinquent tax revolving fund. What reason is that on the forecast?
And I can speak to that too, if you want me to, Steve, because Steve works on the 3-year model. And we're seeing good news in the 3-year model, but as USDA taught us, that's wonderful what you can show here. But what are we doing long term, right? What happens when we look out and use this forecast model? So the changes that Steve talked about making were all that was made, including the changes to the 10-year. So what that does is kind of show you where it shakes out. Next 3 years, it looks like we're okay. And then when you look at the 10-year, the bottom kind of falls out of it after those 3 years, if you will. And we didn't change anything else because we want to kind of see what's driving that, right? And now we can see, to your point, boy, in future years, we are going to have a reliance on, if not delinquent tax funds, something else. You can see down below in the expenditures where the MERS payments really drop off. And we knew that was going to help us and sort of be our saving grace. But you can see what those salaries and benefits are doing when you continue to have that escalator on that wage. It's eating up that savings, and you can kind of see it modeled in this 10-year. The revenues are holding steady, but expenditures are really accelerating.
Okay, because that was my concern, because if you calculate out, and I was forecasting out at the end of 2032, looking at that when we are underwater, no fund balance, ending fund underwater to the tune over $1 million.
Yep.
Now, if you calculate and bring back into again, way you can play around with numbers, that's why I'm now always a big proponent of long-term spreadsheets, because it's only what you can skew numbers as much as you want. Putting a positive spin on it, if you add that back, it's roughly 2.2 million into that use of fund balance. And I'll remind commissioners too, if you look at that number, and I've been a proponent of it, and I'm not going to push it tonight because I think that's something you don't want to go down that pathway yet. But with the delinquent tax revolving fund, there's currently $4 million that's used as basically seed money. And that's money that the board a long time ago accounted for. So under the delinquent tax revolving fund code, I believe that money, instead of coming from self-funding by this board, can be borrowed and used. So you would have a corresponding decrease probably in the money that you're going to be able to use. However, you have $4 million coming into your coffers, which if you add that 4 million, you're now roughly around $5+ million, which sits you at a 20% fund balance. So again, skewing numbers. So that again, now forecasting back, there's concerns too. Now you can play around with the numbers too. And if you look at cannabis, who knows? I mean, right now it's $56,000 a license. We had two in our county. Arguably, we think we have 3 now. So next year, if it continues on, it'll be another 50 plus. I always harken back. People have heard me speak about Mecosta County and their 16 licenses. Again, how long that continues on, who knows? With capitalism and things like that, you know, if there becomes 10, are there going to become 7? Are there going to become 5? I think that kind of weeds itself out, pardon the pun. You know, all these things factor into everything. And I guess I'm going to sum it up by saying, this is why this is a forecast. It's a good tool to have. Where, you know, Commissioner Jelezinski's been talking about it for a number of years. I've mentioned it, Commissioner Hope. I think all the board members have talked about good fiscal responsibility. And we're bringing more and more of this in. And now, as you mentioned with the USDA loan, it's not only our talking about it now, it's mandated, it's required. So it's a good thing. Again, you can skew the numbers. I don't want, you know, someone to say, well, in 10 years, in 2032, you're 1.3 million in the hole. What are you going to do? I just explained. Well, now you skew the numbers again. You're $6.6 million up. So again, good snapshot. I think it was kind of glossed over, but I think the biggest expenditure going forward, obviously, is the MERS. That's one of them. But salary and benefits, it goes from 15 million up to 19 million in 10 years. So that's a lot. And, you know, that's the way to run a business: increase revenue, decrease expenses. So kind of speaks for itself. So that's going to have to be monitored. Hopefully, you know, you never know what's coming down the pipe. Who thought ARP money would come in? Who thought, you know, some of the other money that came in that this board was able to use and incorporate. So again, it's a good snapshot and it's a good tool to have. And it's a good managerial tool going forward that boards in the future can use. So thank you for administration, Mr. Korinovic, putting it together. Thank you. That was all, Mr.
Questions or comments?
Just real quick, Steve, I see some confused looks out there, and what Steve's showing us is a 3-year forecast. What Vice Chairman Horton was talking about is a 10-year forecast that we have in front of us and that we were looking at in finance. I guess, Steve, if I could, I'd like this spreadsheet. I'd like to see the going back the few years along with the 10-year forecast, so we can kind of see the actual and then what happens from there. Just to kind of play around with ideas. And I thank you for, I know I talked a little bit about the salaries and benefits being forecasted at 1% increases and didn't think that was realistic. When you see them forecasted at 2.5% and then 1.5% for operations, certainly those are our 2 biggest expenditures, salaries and benefits and then operations, but you can see long-term what that does to our bottom line. But
And I'm sorry for any confusion I caused with handing this out when I did, but this 10-year forecast, and Melissa's on the Zoom, so correct me if I'm wrong, Melissa, comes from our accounting. I think Melissa Franquist put the 10-year together. So I will ask her to add some years of history, I believe. She used the forecast as the, you know, as the jumping off point for the 10 years, but.
yeah, if she could add those few years of history to that, that'd be nice. That would help me.
Yeah,
And if we could
the history
also-
is there in the
right.
forecast model that Steve has.
And if you're going back, if we could go back 5 years, only because the last 2 has been such COVID related, you might want to jump back in before COVID and see, and then you could see what COVID affected too. So again, thank you. Sorry to jump in there.
That's okay, no problem. Good comments. The other question I had is the added MERS. Can you explain the added MERS? Certainly that isn't our total MERS cost. The rest of it's.
Oh, no, that is above and beyond what we thought.
The
our
rest of
MERS.
it is, okay. And the rest of the MERS cost is where under salaries and benefits or?
Yes, that is
Okay.
correct. Current year, we're about 1.9 million that we send to MERS for our defined benefit pension. And through this process, as you are aware, you know, we looked into maybe bonding for our pension liability. And so through that process and the reports that we needed to MERS to generate for us, as we look at that, we started to see, wait a minute, those payments look a little higher than what we thought our payments were going to be. And so with that knowledge, you build that into the forecast. They say, oh, yep, your experience wasn't where we thought it would be. MERS changed some assumptions, which changed some of our funding, which is going to cause us to send more. So this is in addition to what we expected every year to send. It's just you don't work on a forecast like this with that knowledge and not build it in, right? It's going to be a major expense.
Yeah, well, it's good to see it separated out there like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we could have built it into wages and benefits, but it would have certainly been lost and there would be no conversation about it.
Right. Yep.
Other questions? Go ahead, Commissioner Engler.
You answered most of my questions about the MERS, but that was the one that I was looking at mostly. How often do we get a reassessment on that? It seemed like we got pretty quick ones, and doesn't seem like it used to be a yearly assessment, but are they going to do it yearly where they reassign that number?
They do it every year, and we receive our annual MERS valuation in June. So for the calendar year 2021, we will receive next month, and that will have updated, more realistic numbers, probably in line with hopefully in line with what we've added here.
Never seemed to move that fast before, and now the numbers move quickly. So I'm just hoping that the new assessment might be.
And part of why, and we'll talk about when the assessment comes, we'll talk about what's driving the change. Part of it is, like I said, because MERS changed their assumptions, right? They adopted mortality tables that are unique to public employees, and finding that here's a benefit, folks. Public employees generally live longer. So we've got that in our corner. So what does that do to the pension assumption? We're going to pay longer. We're going to pay more longer. They recently reduced their return on investment assumptions, right? And so what does that do to our, that takes our assets down and our unfunded liability increases. So part of it is due to that. And part of it is because MERS assumes a 3% wage increase every year. And we did a little better than that in the last couple of years as an average.
Like their investment portfolios were performing quite well, but of course with inflation and everything, but I know that was always a big plus because their investments always helped us quite a bit. So
yes, long term especially, right? And the way they smooth it out long term. Yes.
That's all I have.
Other questions, comments?
Just one more comment. This is one of the things I really wanted to have in place for prior to us meeting for kind of a goal session, strategy session as a board. So this will help us move forward with that.
I guess in a closing statement, I want to agree with Commissioner Horton. This is a snapshot, but it's also a what if tool, because we're going to be looking at opportunities, challenges in the future. And I know we've had this tool now, 3 years? But before that, we adopted an annual budget blinded to the future as to what we're looking at. I think this is going to give us a better control and make us more responsible as we manage projects or proposals that come before us, because we'll know what its impact. And I'd like to see this as part of our annual budget process. So we get the annual budget, but we also get this as a picture that incorporates that annual budget. So we know if we need to make some adjustments or we're looking at some really tough times ahead. So I appreciate it, Steve and Nicole, for the work on this tool.
Absolutely, you're welcome. I will stop sharing and turn. But yeah, no, I think that's, I think that there's a lot of information there. I think we've talked about various different things that maybe we can even do to make it better, and do some things to break out and we have salaries and benefits in a line. Maybe we split that out. I mean, there's a lot of things that Nicole has had some really, great ideas to modify it even more to provide better, even more information and better information. And And then, yeah, I think you're right. I think marrying the two, which I think the 10 is built off of the 3. So a lot of that, as you were saying, is in the spreadsheet. It might not be reflected on the page that you have in front of you with the 10, but it's all being driven off of the same platform, I guess, if that's, if that sounds right. But no, I think we'll just continue to update it and provide it to you as commissioners, so you can make informed decisions.
Well, this was just a presentation update, so won't require any further business at tonight's regular meeting.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, with that concludes the work of the Finance and Administration Committee for this work session.
Thanks, gentlemen. We have no criminal justice and county affairs business tonight. Brings us down to Human Resources and Public Works Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our first and only item is consider submitting the grant application to request funds from Mount Pleasant Area Community Foundation in the amount of $11,000 for the Chippewa River Erosion and Canoe Launch Project, and authorize the board chair to sign the same. We have Sue Ann Hoffmeyer here, our our Parks and Rec Director, to give us background on this. Thank you.
Hi, everybody, back. We just a short staff report requesting this is in regard to the Chippewa River Erosion Project that hopefully will be underway this summer. And we decided to put in another request through the foundation, and we need a letter of assurance. What we did is looked at some of the other funds that were there that we had we have received a lot of funding from various groups, as you can see in the report. But it was decided to do, since we are making our launches more accessible, to ask that this be considered for the access to recreation funds and the other funds related to that. And to hopefully, we're requesting $11,000 to also go towards the fund. So as you know, the project has gone up in price. So we're doing whatever we can to offset that cost. There will be somebody passing a basket around, so. But we're almost there. So, I mean, we have the funding for it, of course, but this was just something that we had the opportunity to put in another request. So.
I saw an article in the Morning Sun too about this issue, which was really nice.
God, showing our lovely pictures of why we need the project. So, yeah. I'm sorry, tell the wrong thing. So, with that, that's what we're just asking to move forward on this. This letter is required, as you probably all know. So.
Any questions or comments at this time about this project?
Only thing out of committee was, and Sue Ann answered this, is just so we're not going to the well too long. Appreciate all these people that have funded this and everything we put into it. She assures me that we're in good shape.
I did call them before I applied. I didn't want to be too, I'm back again. So yeah, thanks for reiterating that. Because yeah, we're trying to be very respectful for all the support we've gotten for this project. So, and we do have funds from the parks, as you guys have already seen in the previous meetings, to support this project. And that is part of our millage, was to do park improvements, through the millage to go to projects is one area that we really wanted to continue on. So for this project, we really want to get it doesn't hold up our project at all. I assure you. We have a pre-construction meeting in 2 weeks. I want to look at.
Oh, good, Sue.
Anyways, I know you know that. I'm just teasing you, but we are moving forward. We've got a pre-construction meeting here in
Great. Thank you.
That concludes the work of the Human Resources and Public Works Committee, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, gentlemen. That would bring us down to intergovernmental affairs, of which we have none. We have no administrator controller issues, no unfinished business. Under new business, Commissioner Engler, would you present that item A, please?
Sure, we have up, consider approving the lease agreement between the County of Isabella and Mark F. McDonald for agricultural purposes effective May 1st, 2022 until December 31st, 2022, in the amount of $6,600, and authorize the board chair to sign the same. Mr. Chairman, can I make a few comments on it? Just observing, it's a little bit in my wheelhouse, so the start is May 1st, which is normally we'd already be into the season already. So this agreement is within the range of lease agreements going rates. Mr. McDonald has worked the property before, so he's not going to be behind as far as soil tests and soil fertility. So a couple other real quick comments on there is I was kind of questioning the property tax in there he would pay it. It's kind of a standard lease agreement. So when I started out, it used to be a handshake, and then it was 1 page. Now we're up to 7 or 8 pages. I think the last one I did was like 14 pages. So just kind of the world we live in. But it's my understanding that there would be no property taxes since the county owns it.
It is my understanding from the county attorney that the county is exempt from the property taxes assessed on the property, and the lease clearly lays that liability on the lessee.
Okay, I was just curious.
It reiterated that. Now, I mean, we all know the purchase price of the property. We all know about uncapping, but you don't have to assess the property at the purchase price, right? As assessors go, I've been schooled on this recently. And so the 22 values are not up to what we paid for, up to, the sale price. So the taxes wouldn't be as damning as you might think they could be. But clearly in that lease agreement, Mr. McDonald has accepted that liability.
It's weird though, because the person that's selling made it high and you know what I mean?
I do. I do.
Then
That
it
is,
comes
it's
back.
unusual. Yeah.
If you leave that property open, you're asking for invasive species and weed to populate in there, and with the trouble we have. Back of that. One last thing on there is item number 16, which is I thought was a nice on the leasing possession and enjoyment. He will not, if we have to go in there and do crop damage, he's not going to ask us to pay for the crop price. And that's the way commodity prices are highest. That could be a pretty good number if we go in there and tear about. But he just asked for us to be careful and not to do too much damage. So I thought that was a nice addition to that. So going forward, I think it's a great idea. So.
Thank you. Any other comments on that? Thank you, Commissioner Engler. Item number B under new business. Vice Chairman Horton, would you present that for us, please?
Certainly. Consider adopting resolution number 2022-02, authorizing the Isabella County Medical Care Facility Operations, Maintenance, and Capital Improvement Millage Ballot Language Proposal. We have representatives from the Isabella County Medical Care Facility, one of them being Alyssa Hanick, the administrator there.
Well, Alyssa's bringing that up. I'll introduce myself. I'm Philip Holt. I'm a contracted accountant for Isabella Medical Care Facility. I've been working with the facility for about 2 or 3 years now. I was a contracted accountant. About 17 years experience.
And as Jim introduced myself, I'm Alyssa Hanick, the administrator at the Isabella County Medical Care Facility. I've been the administrator there for 3 years. I've been employed by the facility. Prior to that, I've been a total of 12 years. I was the finance director at the facility. I think I see a lot of familiar faces. the board. I'm just going to give a short presentation on the facility. It's the same that's on the screen.
Michelle, I just want to make sure is her mic on.
Can you hear me better? Or? Okay. The Isabella County Medical Care Facility is a 100-bed skilled nursing rehabilitation facility, which is owned and financially supported by the Isabella County, by Isabella 65. At the facility, we attain and maintain an individual's highest practical, physical, mental, and psychosocial well-being through a comprehensive interdisciplinary team approach. ICMCF has a long history in Isabella County as a top choice facility providing exceptional skilled nursing care and rehabilitation services. ICMCF, a 5-star rating from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, nursing homes with 5 stars are considered to have a much above average quality. Louder. ICMCF has been the recipient of the prestigious Governor's Award of Excellence in both 2014 and 2019. This award recognizes providers focusing on quality initiatives in the most pressing health issues. Like I had said, we're a 100-bed facility. We're a 3-story building. On our first floor, we have a 20-bed dementia memory care unit. We also lease space to Creative Beginnings Daycare, which provides childcare services to over 65 children in the community. And we share a campus with McLaren Central Michigan. Our second floor is a 40-bed unit, mostly short-term rehab, but we do have some long-term care on that floor as well. This area houses our transition unit, which is just a transition from the hospital into our facility. For COVID purposes, sometimes people have to be in those rooms on an isolation period. And it also houses our COVID unit, which would have our own residents that have COVID. We don't admit any COVID residents other than returning our own COVID residents. And our fourth floor is our long-term care unit. Annually, we provide services to over 300 residents in all types of care situations. We have short-term rehab, which provides occupational, physical, and speech therapy 7 days a week to meet the goals for residents to successfully return to the community. Our long-term care provides residents with comforting, compassionate care while maintaining their dignity and respect. Our registered nurses, licensed practical nurses, and certified nurse aides provide around-the-clock nursing care for those with complex medical conditions who need assistance with activities of daily living, such as getting out of bed, bathing, toileting, dressing, walking, or eating. Depending on the needs of each individual, their care team may include physical and occupational therapists, speech language pathologists, registered dietitians, social workers, and coordinators. Together, these professionals create a personalized care plan based on the individual's strengths, needs, and abilities. On our secure memory unit, the residents residing there all have a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease or dementia. We have staff there with specialized training. We coordinate with Central Michigan University to utilize Montessori methods of care. And we focus on activities for one-on-one needs such as gardening, therapy animals, lifelike pets, dolls, and sensory. Benefits beyond conventional skilled nursing care. This slide highlights what sets ICMCF apart from other skilled nursing facilities. Simple amenities that you will not find everywhere. One thing that I want to point out is one thing that our facility has been able to provide for all of our residents is 56 private rooms. We also have televisions in every room and cable and phone, and you won't find that in all facilities. In fact, you probably won't find that in most conventional skilled nursing facilities. Our proximity to McLaren is very helpful. Access to local providers without going out in the snow and different things. And so again, that slide just highlights what sets us apart from other conventional care. We do have the highest staffing ratios in the county for skilled nursing care. You can see by the slide taken from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. ICMCF averages per resident day, hours, and minutes exceed Michigan's average and the national average, which allows us to provide higher quality care to our residents. We employ on an average 275 staff in the community annually. This slide gives a high-level summary of what we've been able to do with the facility with the millage we've had for the past 20 years. In 2005, there was a new construction of the 20-bed secure dementia unit and a facility remodel. In 2014, we added a new transition 18 of our double occupancy.
You're wearing them out, Alyssa.
I know. Gosh. And really that is to 36, private occupancy rooms. It's helped fund our MERS pension and keep it above 90%. We've done multiple equipment and technology upgrades. We've been able to maintain a transportation fleet for residents' quality of life, getting them to appointments or taking them out in the community, shopping, color tours, just looking at the Christmas lights. So we do have a bus and a couple of vans that help us do that and get people out into the community. And we've also been able to attract highly skilled staff at competitive wages. Who benefits from the millage funding? Everyone in the community benefits. We all have partners, parents, grandparents, sisters, brothers, and friends who at one point in time may need access to care that ICMCF provides. It is for if it's just for a short visit from elective surgery or an injury or a more long-term need. So the ICMCF millage proposal renewal would take place on the August 2nd, 2022 ballot. This maintains the up to 1 mil, which has been levied for the past 20 years. Over that time period, with the oversight of the commissioners and determining the need for the facility each year annually, we have received between 0.7 mil up to the full mil. And this would provide the same oversight and annual determination of the need. The ballot proposal is for a 10-year millage up to the 1 mil. Approval of this millage is a zero increase to tax to property owners on their tax bills. I mean, I know you can't really say that because the value of the property taxes, but we've been on the tax bills for the last 20 years. And it will allow us to continue to provide five-star care in a well-maintained facility. Specifically, the ICMCF millage renewal funds would provide the following, above operating. Master planning for continued facility improvements. We're in the middle of that master planning and current estimates are at about 8 million. We do have the main center of the building, which is still the 1965 original building. There were cosmetic updates done to that area of the building, but no infrastructure. It needs a more updated HVAC system. The entire plumbing system needs updated. Those rooms need updated. It's all been cosmetic over the last, 20 years that have been done to that space. It will, building and mechanical updates are estimated to be over 2 million. It'll allow us to maintain our 5-star staffing ratios and continuing operational excellence to provide residents with the highest practical quality of life. We'd like to thank the commissioners and Isabella County citizens for not only their support of the medical care facility, but all the services that they support, which make this an extraordinary county to live in and serve in.
Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Johnson.
Your occupancy rate's at 100%? And if it is, what is the wait time for somebody to be able to get into the medical care facility?
We may have a couple beds available. I didn't check the full occupancy today. We're not running at 100% occupancy. With COVID, we have decreased that occupancy a little bit. We're running closer to 70% right now. Without getting too far into the weeds, we are in a plan with the state of Michigan, which helps us financially to not take any financial discounts on our Medicaid rate. We entered into a 6 months agreement with them, which allowed us to maintain our 85% occupancy. There's repercussions for Medicaid reimbursement if your facility is below 85%. So in doing that, there's current rooms just for the last 6 months we have not been able to use. And we did that because we wanted to still maintain the quality of care to our residents and not burn out our staff and have the same staffing ratios so that we could provide that care. So that's coming up in June. We have been able to secure a more stable staffing environment. We're seeing a lot more applicants. And so we will be, increasing that occupancy. The wait time can all depend. If someone has to stay in a transition room for 2 weeks and you need to come in and you need the transition room, which is all based on your vaccination status, you might have to wait 2 weeks because I don't have a room. But if you can come into a different available room, some people stay with us for a week or two for rest, rehab, and some people stay for 3 months. So I think our wait time is probably higher right now than it was, 2 or 3 years ago, just because of, what we're able to take care of. And also, with all of our regulations, we're required to hold the COVID area. So, those are rooms that we can't use. But would need those spaces if we did have an outbreak in the building. And we have areas we can relocate that if we need the space to be bigger or smaller. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you.
Want to say, I'm sorry, we made you sit through the whole meeting to do your presentation, but we have to take care of this under new business because of the timeliness of it. Normally it would come through committee, but we need to get the resolution approved. And we appreciate you coming. We appreciate the presentation. I've heard really good things about medical care facility. I've known some folks that had loved ones there and I hear good things about it.
Okay, any further questions or comments? Thank you very much. Very nice presentation.
Okay, so we will consider that resolution at the regular session tonight. And that brings us down to general public comments. Do we have anyone for general public comments? Do we have anyone online out there? Okay. Okay, I don't see anyone for general public comment, so announcements. Any of the commissioners have announcements?
I'll just let everybody know there is an election today. And there's a city commissioner, 2 on the ballot, and also the Gratiot Isabella Tech Center Millage is up for renewal. So not an increase, just a renewal. Get out there and vote.
Thanks for that reminder. I was voter number 1 at precinct 6 this morning. So. Any other announcements? Okay, hearing none. Is there a motion to adjourn?
No.
Support Jelezinski.
And support. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And we are adjourned at 5:29 PM. Yeah, I think so.